This is NECO 2021 General Mathematics Paper 2, and we are answering question number 9, and the question reads, an aircraft flies from the location P, which is on latitude 12 degree north and longitude 11 degree west, to another location Q, which is on latitude 12 degree north and longitude 11 degree east, and that takes 2 hours, and then change course, that change direction, and arrive at another location S, which is on latitude 44 degree north and longitude 11 degree east. And this takes 6 hours from Q to S. So the question asks is to calculate correct to 3 significant figures. Question number A, the total distance covered. And question number B, average speed of the aircraft. And question number C, asks you to find the time difference between town Q or location Q and location S. And you are now asked to use the pi as 3.142 and the value of R, capital R, that is the radius of the Earth, at 6,400 kilometers. So let's attempt to answer this very question to get a solution to the problem. Going back to the question, the aircraft flies from this town P or location P, which is on 12 degree north latitude and 11 degree west longitude, to town Q, which is on latitude 12 degree north and 11 degree east longitude. You can see from these two locations, P and Q, they happens to share same latitude, which means traveling by this aircraft from P to Q is traveling along same latitude, and that latitude is 12 degree north. But from Q, moving to location of S, looking at Q and S, you can see that it is longitude that is 11 degree east, 11 degree east, that is common. So from Q to S, the aircraft travels along the same longitude. So the total distance will now be the distance covered from P to Q and the distance from Q to S. So let's attempt to get the distance PQ first. Distance PQ is given by the formula theta over 360 multiplied by 2 pi r cos 12 degrees. This distance PQ is distance along the same parallel of latitude. So we make use of this very formula. Remember, is 2 pi small r, and that small r is always replaced by r cos angle of the latitude. In this case, it is latitude 12 degree north. So we'll now find what is theta. That theta will now be difference in their longitude. The longitude of P is 11 degree west, and the longitude of Q is 11 degree east. You can see it's to two opposite directions, west and east. So in that case, we now add the longitude. That will give us the angle theta. So addition of 11 and 11, that gives us 22. So we now substitute the theta by 22, pi by 3.142, r by 6,400, and find this cos 12. So when that is done correctly, we now have 22 over 360 multiplied by 2, multiplied by 3.142, multiplied by 6,400, multiplied by 0.9781. This is the value of cos 12 from your calculator or for figure table. So multiplying these values correctly and dividing by 360, you now have 2,400 and 3.9 kilometers. This is the distance from P to Q. Let us move ahead and find the distance from Q to S. Or location Q to location S, the distance travel is given by the formula theta over 360 multiplied by 2 pi capital R. This is the distance along the same longitude, that is distance along a great cycle. So we now find the theta. Theta would now be the difference in latitude. So this is latitude 12 degree north, and the other latitude of S is 44 degree north. You can see it's same direction. That is same hemisphere, north. So we now subtract. So 44 minus 12 is what gives the value of theta. And if that subtraction is done correctly, you have theta as 32. So substituting theta by 32, pi by 3.142, r by 6,400, you now have 32 over 360 multiplied by 2, multiplied by 3,142, multiplied by 6,400. If you now multiply these values and divide by 360 correctly, you now have 3,574.9 kilometers. This is the distance QS. So now go ahead and find the total distance. Total distance, which we now said is the distance from P to Q plus the distance from Q to S. So substituting distance PQ by 2403.9 and substituting distance QS by 3574.9. Adding these two values correctly gives answer 5978.8 kilometers. And if this answer is now rounded to very significant figures, I now have 5980 kilometers. This is the distance, this is the total distance covered by this aircraft. So let us move ahead and answer question number B. Question number B asks you to find the average speed of this aircraft. This is the distance and this is the time taken. From P to Q it takes 2 hours, while from Q to S it takes 6 hours. So total time will now be 8 hours, and this is the total distance. So the average speed will now be equals to total distance covered divided by the total time taken. So you now have 5978.8 divided by 8. So dividing this correctly gives a result 747 kilometer per hour when rounded also to 3 significant figures. So this is the average speed of this aircraft. So question number C asks to find the time difference between a town Q or the location of Q and the location of S. So to answer that question, we look at the location of the two towns, particularly we look at their longitude. It is longitude that gives a difference or variation in time. And the two locations Q and S happens to be on the longitude 11 degree east, 11 degree east each, which means the two towns will not have any time difference. So time difference between Q and S, the answer there is no time difference. So this answer that is very question number 9. Let me just share with you quickly the mark distribution for this very question as it is there in the marking scheme. The very first mark is bonus 1 mark, and this bonus 1 mark is for getting a theta that is different in longitude as attempted to find the distance PQ, and you now have theta as 22 degrees. You have this bonus 1 mark. Next mark is substituting the value of theta, the pi, and the r, and the cos 12 in the formula in attempt to find the distance PQ. You have this method 1 mark. And when you now have the value of cos 12 degrees from your calculator, you have this bonus 1 mark. Simplifying this up to the end, you have another method 1 mark. And when you now have the answer 2403.9 kilometers, you have this accuracy 1 mark. Attempted to find the distance QS, substituting theta, pi, and r correctly, you now have a method 1 mark. And when you now simplify that result up to the end, you have another method 1 mark. And when you now have the final answer as 3574.9 kilometers, you have accuracy 1 mark. Attempting to find the total distance by adding distance PQ and the distance QS correctly, you now have method 1 mark. And when you now have the total distance as 5980 rounded to 3 significant figures correctly, you have this accuracy 1 mark. Dividing total distance by the total time to get the average speed, you have the method 1 mark. And when you now have the average speed as 747 rounded to 3 significant figures correctly, you have this accuracy 1 mark. And the last mark is bonus 1 mark, and you have this bonus 1 mark